Hey, what's happening, my people? Hasn't gotten any easier. um, and I've come to, I've made peace with the fact that I don't think it will. I think there'll always be this void. And it's really, we can't control people, places, things. What the universe gives us, it gives us, and it's on us how we respond. That's the power we do have, is how do we respond to it. And it hurts, but even in death you can find a silver lining if you look hard enough. And Vinny really didn't make it too difficult to find that. He was very conscientious, very ahead of his time, all of his life. But even in this, like, it is calculated and meticulous in the planning, and making sure that the things that he knew in each of us, we'd be proud, and we'd also be protected to the extent we could be. So that was pretty amazing. That's the silver lining, and it's something. It's everybody says there's no words. There's none. there's no words to describe that feeling. And then to know that it's something that I have to live with for the rest of my life. That's So I better hop to action, right? I better find a way to respond to this in a way that honors the time we did spend, rather than dwells on time we didn't get to spend, which is fictitious. It doesn't exist, and apparently it wasn't supposed to. So for me to sit in that space, that's where Buddhists say pain is optional, suffering is a choice. That's what they mean. So I could carry it's fine to suffer and grieve for the time that you do, but to carry that, the down, the wind taken out of me all the time, to carry that's a choice. And a lot of people don't know that they have a choice in that. And I understand that, because I've been in that space too, where I didn't have the cognitive ability to know that I could choose to exit the suffering. I just had to find a different perspective on the pain. I had to find a way to make the pain make sense. Vinny did a lot of that for us. Thank God, because I don't know if I would have found it. But he communicated well. Why? And he communicated that he loved us. He knows we love him. He communicated that he wanted us to be proud of him in his passing. And he also communicated in a more, and it just pains me to say this, but he communicated in a more positive way the woes of his generation and below, maybe one above. He had everything going for him. He never had to experience poverty. He got to go to the schools he wanted to. Could have went to any university he wanted to. Didn't want. He could have went into the trades. He could have went and been an actor. He's done a lot of things already. So good-looking guy. Not really interested in the pack being cool, you know what I mean? So he had that going for him, where he could just really dig into something and focus. But the autism made that hard, and it got better. It got better after the pandemic. So that's the first time he expressed suicidal ideations. That's when we got the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, and that's the only one that made sense. They gave him 2 other diagnoses at the hospital, one for general anxiety and another one. So here's the cocktail they want to give you at these psych wards: something for serotonin, something for dopamine, something to knock you out, trazodone, Seroquel, something like that. That's the cocktail. That's how they sedate the human. And they tried to do it to Vinny, and they were giving him Abilify. I allowed that just because I knew his stay was going to be short. And then they tried to put another one. I'm like, you're out of your mind. So I called over to the Trauma Research Foundation, Bessel and Alicia, and and my neurologist, and they said get him the hell out of there. So we did, and I found this program called Brain Balance. Now, when I'm passionate about something, I'll nerd out, right? Like with the insurance industry, I wanted to know how they got away with the things they got away with, and that I dove in and I dismantled it. Um, once you recognize the pattern, you can reverse engineer that pattern to undo it. With most things, that's not everything, but with most things, you can do that. A lot of mental illness. Um, we almost did it with autism. When he was out of brain balance, you really didn't see the mannerisms anymore. His emotional cues were still off. And for people who don't know how autism works and why this hospital might have given false diagnoses so they could prescribe something, is because there's no medicine for autism spectrum disorder, because it's not a chemical thing. What happens is one side of the brain starts to progress faster than the other. At a certain point, the other side stops developing at all, and the other one grows exponentially. And that's why you have, that's why they're typically savants. I don't know if you've seen Rain Man, that's one of the famous ones, but they have these extreme abilities, genius-like abilities on one aspect of life, and then the other, they just can't seem to fit in. Or, and Vinny's was emotional. That's what was left of his. And we worked on him, and we grew, and we didn't use medicine. We did it the healthy way, and he got through it. And I told him back then, I said, all right, Vinny, I don't think I heard you. In fact, I know I didn't hear you when you were saying that you had a problem with the pandemic. You kept saying that it's my life is over, and I'm like, come on, Vinny. From my perspective as an adult, not really listening, right? Because the truth is, all a kid has is school, their parents, their peer group, maybe church if they go, or there's a few things that they have. That is life. That's the life they know. And I wasn't really putting in perspective what it might do to a kid when you rip that life right out from under them, and you take all control away from the kid and their parents. That's nefarious. It's insidious, what was done to a generation of children. And as planned, and it is as planned, the suicide rate through the roof, suicidal ideations through the roof. And when I finally got that I wasn't listening, that I was trying to project my life experience onto my son, when I finally figured that out was when I was sitting in the emergency room with him, and we sat in this emergency room for 3 days, waiting for a bed to open up for a teenager. That's how full it was. So while we're looking at all the other things that are happening, the financial, the surface level stuff, we're not paying attention to what they did to this generation of kids. And autism, that's not a mistake. That's manufactured, right? Just like poverty's manufactured. It's the corporatocracy. That's the six tentacles, I call it. The big banking, big pharma, big energy, big insurance, military industrial complex, and the attorney lobby that creates the language that perpetuates it all. That's the algorithm that I broke in the courtroom. That's what gets us to our founding tenets, so we can actually do them. We the people are imbued. We the people, all the people. There's no slavery. That I don't want to get into it now, but I don't know if most of you know. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were vehemently against slavery, even though they owned slaves. But they were beat up in the House of Burgess. And if you look at the redacted version of the original draft of they called it a humanitarian crisis. And it is. And George Washington surmised that if we don't free our slaves, we're going to wind up slaves to the British imperialists, just like the men that we rule over with such arbitrary sway. And that's what's happened. So the help wasn't there for Vinny like he needed. I had to pay for brain balance, and then I had to be there. And because I was on the healed side of PTSD, and I understand brain function at a deep visceral level, but also academically through I learned that through Bessel's book, Body Keeps the Score. I was able to communicate with him in real time, and capture the nuances of his behavior. And I could cut things off at the pass. Not always, but I was getting better. And the scumbags of URDS, they made their move intentionally during that period. When Vinny was diagnosed, I was on 24/7 suicide watch. We were having those issues, and everybody knows my kids are my life. They're my priority. No questions asked. I don't care what anybody has to say about anything. The second they need me, that's whatever it is, So, so they figured that's when they would make their move, and they did. And I don't think they thought they were going to kill Vinny. I think they thought they might kill me, or they might, force me into another emotional flashback to where I have an episode and I'm laying in a pool of vomit or blood or whatever the case is. And the narrative they were trying to push, they could have solidified it. At least they thought, in their mind, it failed because I actually did the work. So I am on the other side. That's why I was available for Vinny. And so look, by the time he's 15, 16 years old, there's no mannerisms. He does have the emotional cues that he suffers from, but for anybody who doesn't know what autism is, how it works, it has nothing to do with the chemical imbalance at all. Autism is one side of the brain starts to develop, the other stops. So the outbursts that you'll see from a child with autism, sometimes they cut themselves. Some kids run, suicide. What happens is the two lobes of the brain can't communicate. When that happens, the kids disconnect from their bodies. So if anybody who's ever had a near-death experience or psychedelic, that feeling when you first leave your body, that's what they feel every day, pretty much. And that's fucking scary, right? So, but you don't see anything in these medical journals that address that, because if more people knew that, you could do something about that. Like there's things you can do that are fairly simple. They'd rather prescribe you something and call it a day, right? So that comes down to all or nothing thinking. Everything's very matter of fact for people with autism. The fact that autism is so rampant is not a mistake. They've manufactured these conditions. They need a population separated from first yourself and then everybody else around you. If they can divide us, they conquer us, and they have, and that's what they're doing right now. Vinny, he wasn't depressed. He wasn't suffering. He wasn't anxious. He was awkward. Admittedly so. He was fine with that, I think. Maybe he overcompensated a little bit and would tell us he's fine with it, but he seemed to be fine with it in a strange kind of, like a way that I can't quite understand, but that, again, that matter of fact thing. Oh, I'm this way, this is how it is. Done deal. It's what it is. I'm starting to understand that now, because that's what the suicide was. It wasn't, he's sitting just shrouded in darkness. Everything he did on his way out showed that he very much loves his family, that he does believe there's a future out there. It's just not for him. For his sister, though. And that he wants me to keep doing what I'm doing. He didn't while he was alive, and he thought, and I know he was conflicted about that, because me and him are similar that way. So is Sophie. We agreed that I take this fight on, regardless of consequence. So I did. and I was going to anyway. I'm pretty sure. I felt like I had to, no matter what. The fact that they looked at me in 15 seconds and said we fight, knowing we were going to have to give up everything, still blows my mind. And I think that's maybe why, his mannerisms were so far removed that autism really wasn't a thing, and he didn't like being called autistic, because that separates you, right? And that's a foul thing that that the QEB does, and it's just in general, like humans. Kids are naturally empathetic. Kids aren't going to make fun of a kid that's struggling, like somebody with cerebral palsy. They're not going to make fun of that person when they're kids. They have to learn that shit. So if we were just allowed to be humans towards other humans, there wouldn't be separation. That would just be that person who walks that way. You know what I mean? But we get separated. That's, again, everything they can do to separate us from another human, they do. And I can assure you that everything that they do to separate us from other humans is part of their play. That's exactly that's what they're doing it for. They're not doing it for any other reason. They can cite all the bullshit they want, but they're doing it for separation, so that we can be defeated and conquered. For somebody with autism who's about to graduate, 3 days away from walking down that aisle, looking into this world with this government, these police, that, especially with what Vinny had to see me go through with the scumbags in Oakland County, like mind-blowing shit. Especially for a kid who he was pure. He didn't do anything wrong in his life. Like he was a good kid. He was an asset to the planet, and I got to see how kids could and should be, if they weren't put up against the wall with all this bullshit. And then they made their move. They separated me from the house. That was the first one. They figured I'd break from that. I didn't. And for everything they failed at doing, they would turn the pressure up just a little bit more. More separation from me and the kids. The warrant kept me from going back to work and moving around freely. Because it's nothing to rent a house, and it's not that I can't get. I can go back and do the same thing I was doing, turnkey, in a moment's notice. It's just what they did to prevent me from doing that once I took control of that corrupt courtroom. So Vinny having to see all of that, live all of that, and then being forced out into a world where he doesn't see anything but perpetual wars, because it's true. He doesn't see anything but lies. It's true. The people that he's supposed to revere and trust and give his tax dollars to without question, when he's an adult, turned out to be criminals. That's true. He had talent in multiple areas, but he just didn't. He couldn't be around the lies. So me, I have the life experience now to be able to discern. I can walk amongst liars, and I don't have to dirty myself with that. I can let people be what they are, and I can create my own space, and I can still even love those people and pray the best for them. But that took work. Vinny didn't have the time to do that, but the main thing he didn't have was me, because I've done that. And I've done it through healing PTSD, and the triggers are different, but the brain function is the same in all of us. So with Vinny, I could have very easily, better now too, because he's older than he was then, and smarter. And me and him could have had some pretty deep conversations that would have made him a greater asset to the world. But we couldn't. We couldn't do that. They stole that from us. And what you'll see is 2 years worth of evidence where everything they've done was to keep me from getting back in that courtroom and taking ownership of it. That's what they did. And they created the conditions that estranged me from my son when we were knee deep in this work, and nobody else really had the tools available to him that I did to be able to work through this with him, you know, and I don't blame myself for that. And I know Vinny don't blame me. He made it clear that I'm not blamed for that. I don't even know if he knew that deep down. Again, matter of fact, he just saw a world where he was starting to become dark. The last conversation I had with him, a deep one, it's me and him going back and forth, and him talking about how it's just there's no hope, and he doesn't think the world's going to get better, and I don't know if you're going to be able to do this, Dad, and it's just a bunch of idiots out there. He was starting to, you know, and justifiably so, to start feeling that way as you're about to go out into the world. I get it. I get it. At least we had the lie of the American dream when we were kids, right? Something we felt, you know, and that carried a lot of us. They don't have that. A lot of parents will call their kids lazy. And look, you made your kids. They are 50% you, at least. So we need to stop blaming our kids for conditions that we put them in that has prompted them to become what they are. Because everything's circumstantial, right? Like most people don't commit crime just because it feels good. You know what I mean? Like, crime is a matter of proximity. It's a condition of poverty. Poverty is a manufactured condition. Just like these mental compulsions and all the medication that goes along with it. You have to be able to you have to see the writing on the wall that we've been lied to, right? And Vinny knew that. Vinny knew that we've been lied to, and Vinny couldn't tell lies. And Vinny, unlike most of us, refused to compromise what he knew to be the right thing for some comfort. So he left. He didn't care that the world, and he could have done so many things, but it didn't matter, because to be anything in this world, kind of like to be a politician, you have to play a certain game. And every step along the way in that game, if you want to get to that comfort level, you have to sell just a little bit of your soul. It's how it goes. I know, I've been there. I don't speak on anything that I don't know experientially. I know. Vinny was very wise to be able to see that he was going dark. This could have very easily been a Columbine situation, right? Like, for any kid, you know, people like to point the fingers at the kids and the kids' parents, and yes, there's blame there, but blame really doesn't help anything, because what are the conditions that brought somebody to that darkness that allowed them to carry out such an act, right? Vinny had a different type of upbringing, where I told him, illuminate the space you occupy while you got the miracle of life to occupy it. And he refused to not do that. And I saw it too, that he was starting to get angrier and angrier, and that would have been matter of fact too. So even though this is not going to get easier, and I'm always going to feel this void, I do understand, because he made that clear. It was the way he communicated this was pretty amazing. Still sucks. Still sucks. It's still the most painful thing I've ever had to deal with. I know what loss feels like now, and I didn't really know that before. And I've never understood what another person was going through when they were dealing with this type of. I couldn't comprehend it. Why are they? You know what I mean? Seek to understand. Vinny was right. I don't think he would have went dark, but in the absence of me, he might have. These were the years where a teenage boy needed his father more than anything, and they stole me from him. I'll never get to see my son again, and I'll never get to tell him how proud I am of him for the stance he took. He's a hero to me. He's a voice for his generation. But you don't see him getting mega press, do you? They don't want lighting up the media. right? Like there's something good, something positive, something that brings people together, a positive message in this, what stereotypically and is doom and gloom, the clickbait shit that they like to put out there. Um, if you were to shot up a school, you'd see them plastered all over the place. Creates division. Creates division, creates defensiveness, perpetuates the corporatocracy's plan. So I'm confident that, we're talking to, not we, me, talking to a couple of publications right now. I know that, once I get this footage, then we're going to reschedule over at JRE. Joe Rogan might already be scheduled. I'm not going to say anything. You fucking assholes, come get me. It's happening. And even if it didn't happen, if they would have got me that day on November 7th, if they would have got me and taken me wherever they thought they were going to say, I don't know, the warrant didn't exist. But if they would have got me, everything's out there anyway. It's only going to take a few people to put together what I did, and you can do this. The American people can do this. We can change this relatively quickly if we stop believing their lies. But we have to stop believing their lies. I didn't need Vinny as a lesson. I had already learned that I dreamt the movement, We the People, NTWR, I dreamt it. Which was weird because I never had any aspirations to be in politics or, I was making really good money and was set to make a lot more, and comfort could have been my thing. But I dreamt this movement and it never left me, because I'd read it and be like, man, that's pretty fucking good. Like, why aren't we doing that? And I had already created a system to annihilate big insurance on behalf of the policyholder. So I had already decoded what our laws actually are in America, disguised as law. It's presented in a confusing manner that the layperson will not be able to break down to its core, most lay people, because they're already stressed out, having to work. They're living paycheck to paycheck. That's why they keep the median income just enough. You know what I mean? This is all a Ponzi scheme. Because they need you defensive all the time. So in that, you're working as many hours as you can just to come home and maybe get into an argument or, just go straight to sleep. Whatever it is, but it's all stress. It's all bad. And it's intentional, nefarious, and insidious, this entire system. Vinny saw it clearly. He saw it clearly like I see it clearly. Like I saw it clearly, and then when the premonition came, let them steal it from you, because you'll develop the same type of system within the system for the people that you did for big insurance or against big insurance. And the premonition is so right that it's freaky. It scares me a little bit. It is what it is. And even Vinny's death, I couldn't in a million years, I would have never even thought that he could wind up being the first casualty of this. If I would have, this is how selfish and how much I love my kids, I wouldn't have done it. I know I wouldn't have. And the universe knew too. It's through tragedies like these that if we can find what the universe, what God, whatever you want to call that force is, what probabilistic nature in terms of quantum light waves traveling through infinite space-time, these things that we're being attuned to that will bring us to the highest frequency, which is love and truth. That's where we're being pulled, only there's forces that appear greater because they play on our number one, our inherent goodness, And then the fact that our brains are where they are developmentally, um, they prey on it and they make sure that the masses don't evolve past a certain point. Self annihilate, or whatever the annihilation is. Rinse, wash, repeat. You know what I mean? So the ruling class that I'm talking about, they've been here for millennia, probably. I mean, I don't know that. I don't have facts to back that, but I feel like this has been going on for a while. But that's neither here nor there because it's going on now. And what we can do as humans is we can come together and use the only weapon against them of any relevance. What matters more to them than anything? Their money, their power. We are their money and their power. We're their employees. We're the customers. We're the holders of all their debt. We're the power. They have us believing that we're not the power. And this is set up meticulously. I see how it works, like how they pit the police. They just pit everybody against. If we stand against it peacefully, and just and all we're gonna do is we're gonna take our ball to the other playground because you motherfucking bullies, we're sick of your shit, and we have a globe set up to where we can do that now and do it effectively. That's why I need you, Elon. I need you to call me, my dude. Seriously, like it's time for us we got to do this shit. We need your infrastructure, your satellites. With you involved, I promise you, we dismantle the corporatocracy within 3 months. 3 months, they'll be dismantled. Because all they care about is their money and their power. And when we take that away, they're going to go back to doing what corporations should do in a free market, and that's compete for our favor, right? Like, that's how it should be. We take the profit out of politics. That doesn't belong in, not in American politics, not in a republic where the morale and the well-being of the masses is the heartbeat of that republic. So this is how we do it. We take it back to the source, the core. Where did all this come from? Nothing makes sense. Vinny was right. This fucking place don't make sense. It's a fucking joke. Most of what gets done, like they teach the opposite in school of anything that's good for wellness. You know what I mean? They don't do a fucking thing right, and they're not stupid, right? So, but we keep adhering to this fucking system, and most humans know that it's shit. But we keep allowing it. We keep allowing it. So why wouldn't they keep doing it? Because all they care about is, you know what I mean? So this is on us. It's definitely on me now because there ain't no fucking quitting me ever. Like, if there was anything that was going to make this permanent, it was the death of my son. I'm coming for you motherfuckers. And maybe I'm next. Who knows? Who knows? I say I'm not. I say I'm not. No. Not now. Maybe. Fuck you regardless. Because I'm not afraid. There's not a whole lot you can fear when you lose your child, especially in this manner. I told Vinny during the first suicidal ideations, I said, I haven't been listening to you, bud, and I'm going to change that. And I said, your life is completely different than my life was. For me to try to project my life experience onto yours and think that should be the formula to make your life work is ridiculous. I need to listen to you. I didn't have a 24/7 bullying cycle. I didn't have social media that was addicting the masses by delivering dopamine hits every 2 minutes to these children. I didn't have that. So I need to listen. And I said, people think that they're not supposed to experience cancer. They're not supposed to experience it. No, whatever you're experiencing, it's obviously supposed to, right? No matter what. Like, this is, things happen for us, not to us. So we're supposed to be experiencing these things. And I told him, I said, Me and you are supposed to go through this, buddy. And your mom and Sophia, we're supposed to. And it's going to be us getting through it and being there for each other. That's what's going to give us our superhero, our superhero cape or whatever, one you choose to be. And he got it. He understood that. And I understood him. Just a few of those conversations would have, he'd be here today. I promise you. Just a few. You can't, it's hard to equate the value of a moment in a person. What one single solitary moment can do. It's hard to. It's hard to. And you probably hear these fucking assholes out here just cussing away and fucking idiots. This is what I'm dealing with. Fucking nonsense. This is what I have to deal with to do the right thing. I gotta listen to this shit. But that's kind of funny. I think it's funny. This is irony. God, you're a funny motherfucker. Whatever, you know what I mean? Like, woo, but if I want to stay protected, I take it back to the neighborhood for that part, right? So, but the moments. That's all life is, right? It's a series of moments that we're going to remember, that are going to shape who we are as humans. Or there's a series of moments that we are going to shape into who we want to be. And ultimately manifest more of those moments. That's why I taught the kids, illuminate the space you occupy while you have the miracle of life to occupy it. You never know in one single solitary moment what you might give or take from a person just by being light rather than dark. Easier said than done. We have an opportunity right now as a population to do that, to say, okay, fuck. Okay, we realize there's a system that pit us against one another. We have to let bygones be bygones. When somebody tells you they're suffering, listen. Don't tell them they're not because you've never experienced it. Listen, seek to understand. And in that seeking to understand, you're going to find some kind of common ground because we're all pretty much driven by the same, that there's this inherent goodness, this empathy, this compassion that's in us that drives us. Only it's buried by the powers that be. That's the lie. That's the lie. And if you have the resilience to stand against lies, and a society promulgated on lies and absorb the consequences, eventually the lies will tell on themselves. And you'll see them clear as day. I see them clear as day. Clear as day. Especially, like, I didn't think I could see them any more clear, but okay, I see. They're killing kids. And they do. They slaughter our young in greed wars. Does that make sense? Does it? It doesn't. Vinny was on the verge of becoming dark. He felt it coming. And at least we were able to spend the time together and put in the work to make sure that didn't happen. Because you can't erase that. You know, if he would have gone dark and left the world that way, it'd be a different. He spoke for a generation. He's a martyr for truth, in my opinion. Pure soul that refuses to get dirtied despite the opportunities he has ahead of him in his life. They have no value to him if he can't be who he is, honestly. So he leaves with his head high, doing everything he could to make his family proud of him, but he had to get out of here. And that's a pain that, you know, to have that all or nothing thinking, to not have the ability to discern, have life experience to draw from, or your father when you need him, because of those motherfuckers. That's painful. But Vinny didn't experience pain in the same way we did. He didn't, you know, matter of fact, it is, in some ways that's an easier existence. Because we're looking at him saying, oh, poor, well, then maybe just leave him the fuck alone and let him live his life, and it won't be, you know what I mean? Like, But you put all these mandated requirements on kids across the board, and it doesn't work. That's intentional. It's intentional. So I just wanted to tap into that while I had it. And I keep saying we're in the fourth quarter. I don't know what chapter is going to be written next. But what I do know is the corporate courtroom algorithm that allowed these pieces of shit to steal me from my son and walk away with my company, and they're not having experienced consequences yet. They will. That's what I'm fighting. This is across the board. The entire crux of what I'm doing is dismantling the language that allows for them to pretend that they're doing this legally. No such thing as civil war. War is war. No such thing as civil crime. Crime is crime. We've been lied to. And we can beat this peacefully. I'll always wish that I didn't have to lose Vinny to, you know. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if I was there, maybe the ideations could have. I don't think so though. Because he wanted to fit in. You know what I mean? He wanted to. I'm in a madhouse. The things I have to endure for truth. Vinny couldn't have done it. This would have drove him mad. I love you, bud. I love you. I'm gonna miss you forever. But I'm proud of you. And to the people who created the conditions that made this happen, I'm coming for you. Give me equanimity and liberty or give me death. I told you when this started, if you wanted my truth, you were going to pry it from my cold, dead hands. I'm still breathing, motherfuckers. I'm coming for you. I love you guys.